What's going on, everybody? You're listening to the Josh Lacey podcast, Empathetic Warriors, where we'll talk to real-life warriors overcoming hardships and where it's gotten them in their life. Thank you for listening. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Josh Lacey podcast, Empathetic Warriors. Today we have an awesome and special guest, Dr. Stacey Zaikoski. She has been part of my life for a while, but part of my wife's life. And the reason we're having her on here today is the model that she takes in her everyday life as a leader, as a role model, is so positive and influential. And her life hasn't always gone that way. So without further introduction, Dr. Stacey, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you, Josh?
I'm doing very good, very good. So we've posted a little bio about you, but give us a quick overview of who Dr. Stacey is.
Yeah, you got it. Well, thank you for that amazing introduction. That was very gracious. Well, I guess I should start with how we first met.
Yeah.
I initially met Hannah right when I was leaving active duty in the Air Force, and she was working for another pediatric dentist who I think they were trying to figure out their business model. I was trying to figure out what I was going to do when I separated from the Air Force. And that's initially how Hannah and I met. So Hannah is an RDH hygienist, and obviously she's married to Josh. And we, clicked right away, and we ended up meeting a couple of months later and chatted about possible employment at my practice, and then we just went from there. And Hannah has been the most amazing pediatric ever. So that's how Josh and I met.
Okay.
And then as far as a brief summary, is that what you're thinking, Josh?
Yeah.
So I grew up in the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania. We fondly call it Pennsyltucky. I grew up with, parents that for the most part were functional and normal when I was young. And I had really great close-knit cousins and aunts and uncles that I had really great mentorship from. But into my, preteen, teenage years, my parents at that point had each been married, multiple times, and there were multiple divorces and multiple houses and split houses, and I think I moved 12 times.
Wow.
Between like kindergarten and my senior year. So there was not a lot of stability or predictability.
Yeah.
And I think that creates a whole different set of skills for coping in life and coping with adversity,
Yeah.
And I didn't used to think that way. I used to have a lot more of a negative outlook on it. I think in the last few years, I've been able to look back on it and think, well, maybe I wouldn't be where I'm at today without adversity. Adversity is an important role in a lot of people's lives, and it's how you handle adversity, how you cope with adversity, that determines success. I mean,
that couldn't be more true,
right? We know that about resiliency.
Yeah.
It's how you get back up.
All right. Well,
yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about kind of your childhood, because it sounds like that's kind of where your drive and your mindset started. So how old were you when your parents separated?
I was 3.
Wow. Okay. So you really knew nothing other than that.
Right.
Okay. And growing up in Pennsyltucky.
Yep.
What was that like as a childhood growing up? Were your parents close? Were they far apart, like living wise?
Yeah, like geography wise? They were maybe 30 or 40 minutes apart from each other. So they weren't geographically separated so much. The towns that I bounced between were all within 30 or 40 minutes of each other. So that was positive. And I think my grandparents, when they were healthy and young and able to, they filled a big void, a big gap.
Okay.
And they were amazing.
Okay.
But I knew by the time I was 12 or 13 that I was not going to repeat this cycle if I could help it.
Yeah. Okay. So at a young age, you built that independency and that kind of adult mindset moving forward.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Now, did you grow up with any siblings?
Yes, I have 3 sisters.
Wow. Family full of girls.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Okay. Were you close to them at all?
Oh, my gosh, yeah. I'm still really close to them.
Okay.
Yeah,
Did
my
they
oldest
help?
sister was
Go
like
ahead.
my
Go ahead.
mom. My oldest sister functioned as my mom primarily.
Okay. And where out of all three sisters, where do you rank in the hierarchy?
I'm the second to oldest.
Okay. So how much older is your older sister than you?
She's only 20 months older than me.
Okay, but she played the mom role.
I would say probably once we became teenagers,
Wow.
for sure.
Wow. And how much younger are your younger sisters?
When my mom got remarried, she had 2 girls, and they're 8 and 10 years younger.
Okay. So you guys, there's a pretty significant age gap between you and your older sister and the younger sisters.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So what was kind of your driving factor as a kid? I mean, obviously learning and adapting at a young age of how to be resilient, how to be mature and kind of fend for yourself. What kind of shaped you for those times?
I think my step-parents were big influences in my life.
Okay.
You know, they say everyone who ends up in a good place as an adult for sure had good mentors. And I would say that my stepdad Dan and my stepmom Linda were the most influential for me in my preteens and teens. And Linda was a teacher and she had her master's degree. And she got her master's degree when I was 10, 11, 12 years old. So I saw her go through that process and studying at night and working full time and still getting her master's degree.
Yeah.
And still being a great mom to us. So I think she taught me a lot about following your dreams, and if there's a will, there's a way.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that she believed in me. She saw my potential. She pushed me to get good grades and to take honors classes and made sure that I was doing what I needed to be doing.
Okay. Did you play any sports while you were in school?
Yeah. I played soccer, field hockey, and basketball.
Wow. So not only were you pushing limits on education, you're out on the field playing sports and kind of working 2 jobs essentially, because being an athlete's not an easy task.
Yeah.
Along with being an adult and raising yourself a lot.
Yeah.
So
sure.
when you became 13, you said you kind of started being really resilient on your own. That's a vital time for, any kid, but let alone a young female growing up, maturing. What was that like up until, I guess, 18 when you're an adult, if you will?
Yeah. I think I didn't know any better. So I thought that it was normal and okay. And I thought that I was up for the task. I thought I could do it. I started working when I was 14. And then, by the time I got my license when I was 16, I was waiting tables and bartending and working, 20 to 25 hours a week and still doing high school and sports.
Wow.
But let's be clear. I did sports for the social aspect of it. I was not a great athlete.
Well, I mean, you had to be good enough to get on the team, so we'll give you that credit.
I guess.
So full-time jobs in the restaurant industry while being in high school. When did you make the jump to, did you go right into college afterwards, or military, or what happened with that?
Yeah. So I ended up doing my senior year at a different high school because I had moved from my dad's to my mom's. And my sister Michelle was also living with my mom at the time, and she was in nursing school at a local college called Bloomsburg University. And she basically said to me, "There's no other option. You're going to college right away."
That mom role kicked in.
Yeah, for sure. So I applied to multiple state schools and I got into University of Pittsburgh. So that's where I went my freshman year. And I got half of my tuition covered, thank goodness, right? So that was a huge
How did you get half your tuition covered?
Well, mostly I did get a decent scholarship for it, but because my mom was a single mom, I got a decent amount of federal student aid.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was one advantage of being from a dysfunctional family.
Well, so what did you go to school for starting out? And was it kind of your first option, or did your older sister kind of guide you in making that decision?
So my first major that I selected was pharmacology.
Okay.
And I ended up getting, I cannot think of the right word, but when you get student aid, you get extra money for like working somewhere on campus.
Yeah.
So I got that. And I ended up working in a pharmacology lab. And I thought to myself, within like several weeks, I was like, there is no way this is for me. I loved the pharmacology part of it. I loved the science of it, but like the actual doing it was extremely boring to me.
Really?
Like, I can't be a pharmacist. There's no way I could be a pharmacist. And thank God we have pharmacists that are really great at their jobs, but that's not for me.
Yeah. So how long did it take you to make that switch to
my
your
first
next
semester, I switched.
Really, that quick?
To molecular biology.
Okay.
And biochemistry. But Pitt didn't have a true molecular biology program. So I switched to Millersville for my sophomore year.
Okay.
Which is a state school in Pennsylvania.
When you made that switch, did you have any second thoughts about making the switch, or not that you didn't like pharmacology first, but that, is this really what I wanted to be doing since it wasn't your first option? And did you finish that degree?
I was fascinated by DNA and all of the things that go into making up the human body. It was fascinating to me how these little molecules come together and make this code to make a human body. It's crazy. It's like a miracle, right?
Yeah.
So I had no doubt. I knew molecular biology was for me.
Okay.
So I finished that degree. I got my bachelor's. And I had a minor in biochemistry from Millersville.
Okay.
Yep.
So how did you end up becoming a dentist?
I know, right? So I ended up getting a scholarship to Georgetown into a PhD program for breast cancer. So it was mostly molecular biology, but a lot of oncology is molecular biology.
Okay.
So if you understand DNA and genetics and how cells are turned on and turned off, and how proteins are turned on and turned off, you can understand a lot about cancer. So I ended up majoring in oncology at Georgetown. I got an NIH grant, so I got my whole PhD program paid for.
Wow.
But then I was like, I don't think this is for me. I was isolated working in a lab doing research, and I was talking way too much, and everyone kept telling me to be quiet and shush and do my work, and I was a good student, but it wasn't socially, it
You
wasn't
were a
social
social
enough for me.
butterfly.
Oh yeah.
So
then
go ahead.
I decided I took this, what's the right word? Career counseling. I went to a career counselor and I took one of those tests at Georgetown, and dentistry was number one.
Really?
Yeah.
I guess, I mean, that's not that surprising because it's still staying in the science realm. So it's not like they switched everything on you. But did you ever consider that or see yourself choosing that path?
No.
No?
No, not at all. So I thought, well, I'll go be a dental assistant and figure it out. And I worked for the most fun dental office. The docs were so fun. They had a great time at work. They had a great culture. They took us out to happy hour all the time. It was like the best job.
Jumping forward a little bit, but not staying on that. Is that where you kind of implemented your practices for your office?
Oh,
from
absolutely.
where you started?
I mean, I think it definitely molded my vision of what I wanted.
Okay. Was having a practice the initial goal from the start? No? All right, we'll get to that in a second. So
yeah,
you make another switch into dentistry.
Yeah.
And so now you've been in school for how long before you make that switch?
6 years.
Okay. Was that an intimidating kind of move?
No, not at all.
No?
I didn't think twice about it.
Really?
And, my sister, my older sister, Michelle, the mom, right? And my brother-in-law, Scott, were like, are you ever going to pay taxes? Are you ever going to get a real job? I was like, nope, I'm going to be a student until I figure out what I'm going to do forever.
I think there's people that call themselves career students. They just love going to school.
Yeah, that was kind of me for a while.
Okay. So 6 years into college, you make this switch. And how many years of schooling did you have left? Because I would hope that some of the schooling that you've already done transferred over.
It did.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it did. And at least I had my master's degree at this point.
Yes.
Yeah. So I still had 7 more to go. I had 7 more to go.
Wow. Okay. So did you just crank right through it for the next 7 years?
Well, I didn't know that I was going to do pediatrics.
Okay.
So I did my 4 years of dental school. And then within my first year of dental school, I realized I don't want all these student loans. It's ridiculous. And I was at school in San Antonio, which is a huge military town. So half of our professors were retired military. So a few of them had said, you should consider, an Air Force scholarship. They'll pay potentially for all 4 years of dental school. And then if you want to do a hospital residency, an AGD, or a specialty residency, they very well may pay you the whole way through it. So I thought, okay, I'll see this recruiter and I'll see what they say. And then I got a 4-year scholarship for dental school.
Now, did you sign the contract knowing you were going to get that?
Yes.
Okay. Now, so I obviously went to the enlisted side.
Yes.
What is the officer, the OCS side of going to the recruiter? I imagine it's similar, but probably not the same.
Well, so there's a separate recruiter called a health professions recruiter.
Okay.
So you already have to be accepted into dental or medical school. And then you go to one of these recruiters. And then basically they tell you if you're eligible for a scholarship. Because, you have to still do MEP, right? What's it
The
called?
the ASVAB?
No, they want you. I guess they don't make you do that because you're already accepted into medical or dental school.
Okay.
So I didn't have to do that, but I had to go walk like a duck in my underwear
Okay. Oh,
before.
MEPS.
Yes,
MEPS.
MEPs. I
Yes. Yes. Oh,
I mean, Josh, it was. I think if you, I don't know, have half of a brain and you're already accepted into dental school and medical school and you are physically capable, they're probably going to accept you.
okay. Okay. So was
It's
Air
not it's
Force
not crazy difficult.
so since being in San Antonio, I'm assuming Lackland is the big base that you're talking about
Yes.
down
Yep.
there. Was Air Force kind of the only option for you since you were right next door to Lackland, or did you look into any other branches?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
So I talked with a Navy recruiter, and I talked with Army as well. After talking with my professors, because UT Health Science Center San Antonio had all branches represented, from retirees, from professors, right?
Yeah.
So I was able to chat with all of them, and I was able to talk with the 3 separate recruiters. And I think Air Force just made the most sense for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you share that logic?
Well, I didn't want to be put in situations where I had to compromise care. And I heard a lot of stories where maybe the standard of care for patients was better in the Air Force. Like, you were allowed to do the best treatment that you could possibly do. Whereas I think because of the tempo, maybe of the Navy and the Army, they deploy a lot more. They have a lot more forward missions than probably the Air Force does. You have to do a lot more aggressive treatment, a lot more extractions.
I can say from my experiences, um, naval dental is very just it's a pretty much a tooth mill, if you will. They just push you through the system as fast as they can. There's no, extra care or anything like that. So that makes sense why, if you were really passionate about dentistry, you'd go into the Air Force. So you go talk to the recruiter.
Yep.
What's the timeline between talking to the recruiter and going to OCS?
So when I did dental school, we did OCS or COT at the end of our 4th year. So now
really?
some people do it before they start school, or like after their 2nd year. But when I was doing it, all medical, all dental, all JAG, we did it at the end of school. And then we basically got commissioned and then started our first assignment.
Okay. So were you required to wear a uniform going to school since they were paying for the scholarship and everything like that? No?
Nope.
Okay. So end of your college career, you go to basic training. And then what's that experience like? Was it what you expected? Was it, more or less?
I knew that it was going to be a little bit difficult.
Yeah.
But I did not think people were going to be yelling at me. And I didn't think people would be expecting me to know how to march. I'm like, I just graduated from dental school. You think I know how to march? So I wasn't expecting to get off the bus in Montgomery, Alabama, 100-degree weather in July, and they're like yelling at me because I had a tank top on and khaki pants, because I had my overshirt off because I was on 120-degree bus, from the airport.
And they don't care about giving you AC on the way to there.
No. So I got off that bus and they're like immediately barking at me to get my shirt on. And then, of course, we're like told to find our dorms and unpack and get into our PT gear. And then, of course, we immediately started marching. And yeah, I had no idea what I was doing.
Okay. So it was a pretty good culture shock for you then.
Oh my God, yes. And it really wasn't that bad. I
Okay.
mean, it really
Just
was not that bad.
the initial, now looking back on it, it wasn't that bad, or just after the initial kind of welcome party, it wasn't bad.
I think the first week was difficult.
Okay.
I think it was emotionally difficult.
And then you kind of fell into your routine of what to expect and how it was
Yeah.
going to go.
Yes.
Now, through your basic, did any of your past life experiences help you through that?
Oh, for sure. I mean, I knew how to deal with adversity, and I knew how to deal with difficult people.
Okay.
I knew how to deal with people screaming in my face. That wasn't anything new, you know? Um, and I think I knew how I had grit. I knew how to work hard. I knew how to put my nose down and mind my own business and get it done.
So your childhood was kind of a blessing in disguise
Oh, yeah.
for the end result of what you wanted to get into with the
Yeah,
Air Force. Okay.
sure.
Now you graduate basic.
Mhm.
What's next?
So my first assignment, I applied for what's called an advanced education in general dentistry. So
Okay.
1 year residency, basically in general dentistry. So you get a little bit of all the specialties. So I did in my AEGD at Eglin Air Force Base, just outside of Destin, Florida.
Yeah.
And that was in 2006
Okay.
until 2007. And it was like the hardest but the best year of my life.
Explain.
I mean, it was harder than dental school because
Really?
we were expected to do, in our 2.5 years of clinical work in dental school, I did triple the amount of that clinical work in 1 year.
Wow.
I mean, we did 2 months of oral surgery, and I think I took out a couple hundred wisdom teeth and did, I don't know, 40 or 50 IV sedations.
Just
I
nose to
mean,
the grindstone the whole year.
yeah, I mean, it was a lot of dentistry in a short period of time, but that was the best thing I think I could have done.
Okay.
And I think that's when I fell in love with pediatrics, because none of my co-residents wanted to see the after hours emergency kids.
Yeah.
So I started volunteering to see those calls, to go in and see those kids. And I loved it. I thought it was great. And I could
So
get them through it and talk them through it.
after hours emergency care, meaning like after the office is shut down,
Yes.
kids are playing outside on the
Yes.
playground, bust their tooth out,
Yes.
and you're the one to help them.
Yes.
Now, up until that point, did you know you kind of had that care for kids, or when you experienced it during this extra year of training, was that kind of the eye opener for you?
I've always loved kids.
Okay.
I babysat a lot when I was young. Between like 11 and 14, I babysat a lot. But even through dental school, I would take little side jobs and babysit if people had asked me to do it.
Okay.
And my initial thought when I was ninth, 10th grade, I thought I would be a pediatrician.
Really?
Yeah. And then I
Okay.
went to pharmacology and molecular biology.
Quite the jump, but you ended up finding your way back
Yes,
to
exactly.
help the kids out. Okay.
Yeah.
So that first year, I'm sure flew by because of
Yes.
all the work that you were doing.
Yes.
Did you get to choose your next base, or since you were kind of wanting to specialize in the pediatric side of things?
Mm-hmm. So the way the Air Force works, pediatrics was all civilian training. So I had to apply for what's called an AFIT scholarship, Air Force Institute of Technology.
Okay.
So I applied for an AFIT scholarship at the end of my general dentistry residency. And I did get an AFIT scholarship to do a civilian school for pediatrics, but I had to wait like a whole nother year to apply to the schools. So I ranked my bases as a general dentist, and I did put Dover as number one because I'm from Pennsylvania.
Yep.
And I got pregnant with my oldest Patrick at the end of my general dentistry residency.
Okay.
So when I knew that I was pregnant at the time that I ranked, so I picked Dover, and nobody wants to go to slow or lower. So I got Dover, no problem.
Nice. So you kind of got to go back home, and have family close by as you were starting your family.
Yeah, after being away for, I don't know, 13 years or whatever it was.
Now, during that 13 years, did you ever go home visit? Did family come visit you? Okay.
Yeah, I went.
Family sounds important, so I would assume that there was a lot of communication in between those times.
Especially with my older sister, Michelle.
Okay.
Like when I was in dental school, she bought my flights home to Pennsylvania to come visit for Christmas and spring break and all that stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
So did she ever come visit you down in Texas? I would assume so, with Austin being right there, 6th Street being right there. It's kind of
went.
a luxury place to be able to visit when you're of age, but it's a
so
good time down there.
My stepdad Dan and all my sisters came to San Antonio for my dental school graduation.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So you make it back home to Dover.
Yes.
And how long are you there for?
I was there for 2 years.
Okay. And where did you say the pediatric training was?
I went back to San Antonio to University of Texas Health Science Center.
Wow. Okay. So you kind of made the full circle, but you're still not where you want to be yet.
Correct. Yes.
Now, what's that like, having to wait so long? Was there any kind of questioning of what the end game was going to be for you, or since you had experienced the pediatric side, you were pretty set and determined?
Oh, for sure. I knew that pediatrics was where I belonged. The great thing about Dover is that I was really close to home. I had my first baby. My commander was amazing there. James Coughlin, Colonel Coughlin, great dude. And I got to do a ton of IV sedations, which I loved doing, and taking out wisdom teeth, because we had no oral surgeon on base.
Okay.
And I had just graduated a residency and done a ton of it. So that was actually fun for me.
Yeah.
But I knew that I didn't want to do that forever.
Okay.
Yeah. And Patrick was 18 months old when I started my residency in San Antonio.
Now, was that considered a PCS since it was going to be so long? Like you got to move the whole family down there, so you would stick close? Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Where are you at rank structure wise during all this time? Because I'm assuming that with all this extra education and showing advancements in yourself and your career, it would look good on you, which is, I guess, leading back to or referencing back to your childhood, becoming, mature, young, figuring out that drive in yourself. Where are you at? How's the Air Force treating you?
I mean, I think I was so grateful for the 4-year dental school scholarship. I was grateful for getting the AFIT scholarship, because I not only didn't have to pay for any of my residency, I was getting paid during my whole residency as a second lieutenant.
Wow.
And then when I finished residency, I went in active duty as a captain. So as an 03.
Okay. And so you make it up to Dover, go back to Texas. Are you still a captain at this point?
I made major right at the end of my residency.
Okay.
So once I got so I went to Yokota, to Japan.
Okay.
right after my residency, and I was in major when I got there.
So when you say residency, that's the pediatric side
Yep.
of after that 1 year school back in San Antonio, you went to Yokota Air Force Base in Japan,
Yep.
and that's where you made major.
So I actually made major during my pediatric residency. It was a 2-year residency.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I made major early because I had my master's degree.
Okay.
So they promoted me early because of the master's.
Wow. So you are ahead of schedule,
Yeah.
but what's it like being, I guess, were there any other military members in your residency? And what was
Yes.
that like outranking them so much?
Well, the good news is that there were three others in San Antonio that were also Air Force. And Lee Roundy was one of them, and we called him Papa Smurf. He's awesome. But he was active duty for a little bit before he did his pediatric residency. Maybe, I'm trying to remember, maybe 4 years
Okay.
before he went back and did pediatrics. So he outranks me.
Okay.
And
So
then
there was no
Carlson, the other one.
awkwardness of
No,
outranking any of your fellow students.
no,
Okay.
not at all.
And so you get to Japan. Was that by choice, or you kind of the military, the needs of the military?
That was the needs of the military. I did not want to go because Fukushima, that nuclear accident had happened like in March or April
Yep.
of oh my gosh, that was 2011.
Yeah, I was out there for that one.
Were you?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So that happened before you got there, and
Right before.
that was the news you were going into.
Yes. And I was like, oh, are you kidding me? And I had a 3.5-year-old. Patrick was 3.5.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't want to take a little person into like a radiation, mess.
Yeah.
But so at first they told me I was going by myself, that my spouse and my son couldn't come
Wow.
because of the risk.
Okay.
But then by the time we actually left in July, all of us went.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So you ended up going there. How
Yep.
many years did you spend out there?
3 years.
3 years. What was that like?
The first year was hard, adjusting to a different culture with a spouse and a small child.
Yeah.
And he's now my ex-husband. Tony was my husband at the time, was wanting a career. He wanted a job. He wanted to contribute. And the military, at least in the Air Force, they call spouses dependopotamuses.
Yep.
So, and I think he very much felt like a dependent.
Yeah.
And he so wanted to do his own thing.
But like you were saying, how do you do that? It's not like in the States where you can, go out
Yeah.
to whatever company
Right.
you want and say, hey, I'm here for so long.
Yeah.
My wife's in the Air Force. You're in a different country.
Yeah.
Don't speak the language. Don't,
Yeah.
know what their customs and courtesies are. And
Yeah.
that would be difficult.
It was. And it took a huge toll on our marriage for sure.
Yeah.
Because I think he felt so defeated. And it took almost a year for him to get a job on base. And, he didn't necessarily want to be a stay-at-home dad.
Yeah. Yeah. I think looking back on my military career, which I was single the whole time, but all of my counterparts, seeing them come in with wives and everything, or the females had husbands, I wish the military had done more or did more to assist in the spouses filling their need as well. And I know that's not their job, it's
Right.
it's needs of the military, but
Right.
when you have a happy home, you have a more successful military member.
Oh, it's so true. And you're more engaged in the mission at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
I was really surprised at the number of foreign nationals that were employed on base, more so than spouses.
Yeah.
That was really surprising to me. And I know that that's like status of forces agreement thing, like a SOFA thing, that I'm sure in order for us to have a base there, they had to allow so many foreign nationals to work on base.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's the only way that they would allow the military to stay there that long.
I agree. When I first got to Japan, I was surprised at how many of the gate guards were um, actually the foreign nationals.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, because in my mind, you think of
How does that work?
every base here. There's a few civilians, but most of the time
They're active duty.
it's active duty.
Yeah.
And when you get there, it was kind of a culture shock, shell shock. You're like, oh, okay, take some getting used to.
I hope they're on our side.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So you're in Japan shortly after Fukushima. Did that throw any wrenches into the off-duty time? Kind of, I was on Okinawa, so I was a little bit further away, but where you were was pretty much ground zero.
Yeah. So when we first got there, they were still monitoring water. They were still monitoring air quality. They had just started what's the right word? Like bringing family members back, like bringing dependents back.
Okay.
So it was kind of a slow start for me because obviously I'm pediatrics and all the dependents had been evacuated.
Really? I didn't realize that. So they sent them back to the States.
Yeah.
Wow.
So they were all coming back.
Okay.
As I was getting there. So it was a little bit of a slow start, and I think everyone was trying to readjust,
Yeah.
So it was a little bit chaotic.
Okay.
But maybe that gave me a little bit of time to adjust too.
Yeah, that I could see it working both ways, but I'm sure that it didn't help the scheduling because I'm sure that threw a lot of people late for their checkups, not just day to day hour wise, but
right,
missing appointments and having to reschedule them, and that would complicate a lot of things going.
Yeah, like
going
we
forward.
had a backlog.
Yeah,
for sure.
So after Japan, how long did you stay active duty?
So I went to Right Pat for 1 year after Yokota. And they have a dental residency at Right Pat. So I was really happy to get Right Pat because I really wanted to teach in an AEGD.
Okay.
So I was able to be a staff instructor at Right Pat. So I taught the pediatric course to the dental residents for that year. So that was actually really fun.
Okay.
And that's what I'm doing now in the reserves at Eglin.
Okay, so you did 3 years in Japan, came back to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, and or I guess not came back, came to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, and then did a year, and then you switched over to the reserves?
Yep.
Okay.
So I was a traditional reservist at Right Pat initially.
You were a traditional reservist at Right Pat? What was that transition like?
I was really surprised that there's like no communication between active duty and reserves. It was like a whole new application, whole new process. I was really surprised by it.
Now, when you say no communication, was that like, it was almost like going into the military all over again with the in-processing?
Yeah. It was like I was joining a different branch.
Really?
Yeah, like I was joining the Navy.
But now, when you switched over, were you still out of Wright-Patterson?
Yes.
And dealing with all the same people that you had dealt with the week before?
Almost.
Okay.
But with traditional reserves, there is a whole different unit.
Okay.
Yep. So
there's that whole checking out, checking back in.
Yes.
Just to go pretty much work at the same place.
Yeah, like same building.
Okay.
Same clinic, but different staff, like different dental assistants, different doctors.
Okay.
And then we just saw reservists for their exams to make sure that they were worldwide qualified.
Okay. So what's the activity, your daily routine, kind of daily duties, if you will,
Yeah.
from active duty switching over to the reserves, and then maybe explain the difference between the traditional reservist from what you're doing now.
Yeah. So traditional reserves, you take care of your reserve unit. So basically, we took care of everyone, all the reserve units on right path, which I think there were four. Trying to remember now. But basically, we did all of their dental exams. So on Saturdays, so one Saturday a month, we did dental exams
Okay.
and made sure that everyone was worldwide qualified. So once every 2 years, every reserve member had to have an on-base dental exam. And then on the alternate years, they had to go off-base to a civilian provider. And then on Sundays, it was mostly metrics. Like, we have this many class threes, we have this many that are overdue, we have this many class ones that are mission ready.
Okay. So when you say like class threes, class ones, that
Yeah.
just like, I guess, a deployable status,
Yes.
or they need work done to
Yes.
get them on the,
Yes.
the green list. Okay.
Yep. Yeah, basically.
Okay.
So class 3 means you have a potential to have a dental emergency within the foreseeable future.
Okay.
Dental class 4 means we don't know your status. We haven't seen you for an exam and you're like overdue.
Okay.
And class 1 means we've seen you and you're mission ready.
Perfect.
Class
So
2 means you need some work.
so getting out of active duty, where are you at in the rank structure? Where have you worked up to?
So I'm a lieutenant colonel.
Okay. So were you lieutenant colonel before you exited active duty?
Nope. I was a major when I left active duty.
Okay. Now, that last year of residency, did you want to stick with, or not residency, teaching,
Yeah.
all the pediatric students? Did you want to continue that? Did you continue that?
Yeah,
Okay.
for sure. But I
How
didn't
long?
know. I guess I didn't know how to do it at that time.
What do you mean?
Like, I didn't know how it could fit into my life.
Okay.
Because, at this point, I had 2 young boys. I was
Okay.
trying to figure out civilian job. Like, am I going to join a practice? Am I going to buy a practice? Because I had looked at a practice in Pennsylvania, in Texas, and in Florida. And then obviously I ended up finding this practice in Dayton.
Okay.
But I was an associate in 2 other practices in Dayton before I decided to buy.
Really?
Yeah. So I moonlighted like the last 6 months of active duty, which you have to
Okay.
get permission to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
How is that process, asking for that permission? Now, in your field, is it pretty understandable if they know you're getting out, you're going to have to moonlight, if you will, and it's kind of just a given?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's consideration for that. But I
Okay.
also think when you're in pediatrics, they limit the number of patients that you're allowed to see. So technically, TRICARE, because they subsidize medical and dental insurance, they want people to use their dental insurance when they're stateside, and they want the dependents to go off base because they heavily subsidize that insurance program, right? Like they're paying, I don't even know, millions of
A
dollars.
lot.
Who
Yeah.
knows? A year. So they only want the active duty people that see kids.
Okay.
They only wanted me to see like 100 patients a year,
Wow.
which was extremely boring.
Yes.
So
Now,
I think
did you work in with regular or non-pediatric patients, or since you were a pediatric dentist, were you just kind of bored most of the time?
well, teaching was great.
Okay.
I definitely saw more than 100 patients while I was active duty at Right Pat.
Good.
But there was a need for it.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of first sergeants involved, and hey, this kiddo has this going on. We have an active duty pediatric dentist. Can she take care of this kid?
Yeah.
So that's how I got a lot of my patients, was active duty members that just had kids in bad situations, you know?
I gotcha. Okay.
And of course, we would see them and take care of them. And
Yeah.
luckily, I still was able to go to the OR. So general anesthesia. There were kids that I could take to the OR if they were 2 or 3 and really needed to be put to sleep to get their dentistry done.
Okay. So you start moonlighting.
Yes.
And how
Because
long are you doing?
I'm sure my commander was like, please let her go off base. She's driving us crazy.
Well, you have a very go-getter attitude, so I'm sure that it was a mix of both of you wanting to do more work, them not having enough work for you to do.
Yes.
And so it was a mutual understanding of just let her go, be live her happy life and work herself to death, you know.
Yes,
so how long after you are moonlighting you decide to buy your own practice?
So I was actually separated.
Really?
By the time So I separated in July of 15, and I was still working in those same 2 practices. And I think I just realized that, you know, the very top thing on my career counselor that I went to in Georgetown, I wanted autonomy. I wanted to make my own schedule. I wanted to be in charge of, I don't know, how I was going to deliver care, how I was going to, the materials I was going to use, you know? I didn't want someone else telling me, you can only use that type of white filling, that type of resin. You can't use that expensive one over there, you know? That's better and performs better. And then, of course, I joined the Air Force, right? And they tell you everything.
Yep.
They, like, you know, they own you.
Micromanaging to the max.
Yes. So I think once I got into a practice, and then these people are telling me how to practice, I was like, I don't think this is for me. I think I need to call my own shots.
So how long did that process
It was like
take?
6 months.
Okay.
It was like 6 months. So October of 2015 is when I bought the practice that I'm in now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you said you continued teaching in the reserves. How did you transition to that, and what base was that at?
So I ended up figuring out that there was something called IMA, Individual Mobilization Augmentee Reservist, where you're attached to an active duty unit, not a reserve unit, and you fulfill the needs of that active duty unit. So you like augment them, you help them.
Okay.
So pretty much no US base, stateside base has any pediatric dentist now. If they have a pediatric dentist, they're a reservist.
Okay.
And in order to have dental residencies, you have to have each specialty represented, because you have to teach all of those specialties to the general dentistry residents.
Yeah.
So Eglin they had lost their active duty slot. So they were looking for a pediatric dentist to meet their education requirement for teaching.
Okay.
So they created an IMA position. I found out about it. I applied for it and I got it. Yeah.
How did you find out about that? Because I mean, every branch of the military, but especially the Air Force, is so big.
Yeah.
Was it just networking? Did they contact you?
It was word of mouth. So
okay.
Believe it or not, Dr. Cook, who works in our office, Angela Cook, she found out about it from a mutual friend.
Okay.
Who was also a reservist.
Okay.
So then I just called, because I knew people at Eglin, and said, hey, do you guys have an IMA position open? And they said yes.
Wow.
So basically you find it on the portal. They post all of the open positions on the portal.
Really? So your hard work, your tenacity building up to this point helped you network and figure out how to get this teaching spot,
Yeah.
along with getting your own practice. That is a lot to do in the first year of exiting the military.
It was fun.
You're a brave soul for that, because there's a lot
Oh,
of times
shoot.
there's no easy transition, and you didn't make it any easier on yourself. So you start up your own practice, or
Yep.
sorry, you buy the practice and
Yes.
start it up to what is now yours.
Yes.
And what is that like? Any new business, let alone buying it from somebody else, I'm sure has tons of bumps along the way.
Oh, for sure. I mean, the pediatric dentist that owned the practice was not in the greatest of health.
Okay.
So the business was gradually declining. And I knew that going into it. And I think it was a little bit of a project. Um, and again, I knew that going into it. But I think I was so hungry and motivated to turn it around and to make it amazing. And the mission statement from the get go was, we're going to be deliver the best care. We're going to be the best pediatric dentist in this area. We're going to be positive. We're going to be fun. And I don't know, I guess I had so much drive. And I think I was squashed a little bit in the Air Force, like when you come out of residency, I was so gung ho and I had so many ideas and I wanted to do all these amazing things. And then, my commander's like, hold your horses, like,
Slow your roll.
you have 2 assistants, girlfriend. You have 2 rooms.
Yeah.
You're not doing that much. And you only have this budget, right?
So
So
when you saw this practice, decided you were going to buy it, did any of your, I guess, childhood, that drive, that upbringing that you had, play a role into wanting to purchase something that was, I guess, essentially broken and make it better and mold it into
probably,
something new?
probably.
Yeah.
I mean, in retrospect, probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, going through dentistry, did you, I forget if you said, did you see yourself owning your own
Eventually,
practice?
yes. Oh, for
Yes,
sure.
from
I mean,
the get-go.
I think going into it, no.
Okay.
I think as time went on in my early career in the Air Force,
Mhm.
I knew that was what I was going to do.
Okay.
I couldn't keep, I don't know, squelching, like stifling my own ambitions, my own ideas
Yeah.
to make things better. Like, hey, we should be doing this for kids. We should be doing this for parents. And
Yeah.
everyone's telling me no.
Yep.
I think that was early on in my Air Force career that I decided I am not doing this long term.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a quick or rash decision to get out and make that next big move. It was kind of planned. That slow process through your enlistment
Yes.
had come to an end. You get this
Yes.
practice.
You remember when they were offering people to get out?
Yes.
When was that? 2000?
That 2013-ish.
Yes.
That was
'Cause I
during
Yes.
Obama's era.
Yes.
They called it the VERP, the Volunteer Early Release Program.
Yes. Oh, I applied for it, Josh.
Did you?
And they said, hell no.
We've put too much
Yeah.
money into you.
Yeah.
There is
Nope.
no way you're getting out early.
No, you're not getting out, girl.
So
But I tried.
what, I guess, let's backtrack a little bit. What year did you end up getting out of active duty?
It was July of 2015.
Okay. And the beginnings of this practice, Pedz Dental,
October 15.
is October. You said you knew it was gonna be a project.
Oh yeah.
Was it more of a project than you thought?
No. I think
No?
it was I think it was easier than I thought it was going to be. It took off way faster than I thought. I thought the first 3 years were going to be slow going
Yeah.
and, surviving.
Okay.
But we doubled in 1 year. And then by 3 years,
Wow.
we had tripled, which is why
That's
year 4, we
intense.
moved into the new building.
Okay. So in 4
Yeah.
years, you were able to pretty much remold the practice
Yes.
and be ahead enough to purchase the new building.
Yes.
Was there a need to purchase the new building
Oh, for sure.
because you had grown so much?
Yes.
And when you purchased that new building, I guess I can speak from my experiences and memories with my wife working for you now. It wasn't the easiest process.
No.
So again,
it was like an 18-month long process.
You were met with stop signs and roadblocks and tons of things. Was there any second guessing at this point, knowing, I guess, kind of the comfort that you had at that last building, figuring out maybe I should have restructured something to stay there, or did you know that there was a need to expand and this was all worth it?
I mean, I definitely knew that there was a need to expand.
Okay.
Of course, there was the big butt pucker factor, right? Because it was $1.8 million. And here's this huge loan like looming over me.
Yeah.
And I didn't know at that time that Dr. Cook was for sure going to join us, right?
Okay.
So I'm like,
and you had met her, Dr. Cook, back in the Air Force.
Yes.
Was there any talk, I guess, sorry to backtrack, was there any talk that she would join you in starting a practice or join your practice?
So we worked together a little bit. So she joined, she joined the practice full time right after COVID. It was July of 2020.
Yep.
So in 2018 and 2019, she worked 1 or 2 days a week. Like she moonlighted with me because she was active duty at Right Path.
Okay. And did you know that she was going to want to join your practice?
I didn't know for sure. We had talked about it.
Oh, the scary factor.
Yes. But I didn't know for sure, right? So I was like, I guess I'm just going for it. You know, and I've read so many books about leadership and entrepreneurship, and I think you have to be able to take risks and to have a little bit of faith in yourself and confidence in yourself that you're going to do it and you're going to figure it out.
Yeah.
Because if you can't take the risk, you're never going to reap the rewards.
Growth doesn't happen in comfort.
It's so true.
Yeah. I've heard that several times by very successful people, and it is always true. If you're not willing to be uncomfortable, you won't grow.
It's so true. You'll never evolve.
No. So you get this new building, and you're still teaching in the reserve / this active duty role. So let's touch on this active duty role that you're in, because you're kind of like a glorified reservist that gets to have the active duty title only a few days a month.
Right.
Okay.
So as an IMA, you get your assignment like a contract based on, so there's a certain number of days attached to that contract. So like they say the minimum is 28 days per year up to 42 days per year.
Okay.
But there's no assigned weekend or time as an IMA. So you basically get with that active duty unit and decide what days they need you. And then you coordinate and do it. So like right now I do 2 weeks in the spring and 2 weeks in the fall.
Okay. So you're able to lump sum it all together to, I guess, kind of fit your schedule, but mainly fit the Air Force's schedule.
Yeah.
Okay. And that is still, what base or is that teaching out of?
So I initially started at, I was a traditional reservist at Wright Pat.
Yes.
And then I was a traditional reservist at Tyndall.
Okay.
Then I got the IMA at
Now, when
Eglin.
you say traditional reservist, are you still checking into your unit?
1 weekend a month. Yep.
Wow. While
Yes.
still living in Ohio,
Yes.
doing your full-time job and everything.
Yes.
Okay. And now you're down in Destin
Yes.
at Eglin Air Force Base.
Yes. And I want to say that was 2021 when I got that IMA position at Eglin.
Okay.
Yeah. Because it was after COVID.
So what are your, I guess now we're almost to current time. Are you considering like the lifer in the Air Force Reserves?
Yeah. So 2026, I'll be at 20 years.
Wow. Now the reserves though work a little differently. If I'm right, that it's not your traditional retirement.
Yep.
What is that like for you with the IMA duty?
So it's based on points.
Okay.
So essentially, every year of active duty, you get 365 points. So I did 9 years active duty.
Okay.
So I'll get that number of points. And then pretty much every year, if you do your minimum reserve duty, you get 50 points. Somewhere between like 50 and 80 points.
Okay.
So that point system is how they determine your pension.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. So, and you said that ends in what year?
26.
Wow. So only a couple more years, and then
I know.
Are you going to call it 20 and out, or?
I don't know. I mean, I think if they'll have me, I still want to do it.
Yeah. Well, you seem like you haven't been burned out yet. You're still, an influential part in a lot of people's lives. And if the drive's still there, I mean, why stop something you love?
Right. And it is really fun teaching residents. They're so impressionable. Most of them really do want to learn. I don't think pediatrics is for everyone, but I think it's fun to give them all of the other life skills. I typically take them out one day for lunch, and then I usually take them out one night and just try to give them all of my knowledge about active duty and just about dentistry and about life. In my AEG, our faculty were amazing at that. Mentorship and just life skills.
Yeah. And I can see that played a huge part, because the way that I've seen you run your practice now, and the way that, my wife comes home and tells me how the mindset and the thought of the practice is, you could tell it was very influential. And so for you to be able to retain that, pass that on to the kind of next generation of dentists, if you will, is very, very important, because I feel like a lot of leaders, when they get up to a certain level, they lose kind of, I guess it sounds harsh, but they lose where they came from and turn into that typical
jaded.
Oh, this is the standard. We have to just do this. You can't do anything else,
Yeah.
And for you to kind of kept that mindset is very unique.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. So I guess, where do you see yourself going with the life changes that you've had, going from a rougher childhood, building up yourself, making several changes during college, to owning your own practice? Where do you see those life changes kind of leading you?
Yeah. I think, this is a daily meditation for me, Josh. Like, I journal it, I think about it, and I go back and forth. There are days that I think we have to expand. We need more room. Our waiting room is too small. We don't have enough rooms. Let's add an orthodontist. Let's add another pediatric dentist.
Yeah.
And then there are days that I think, no, I don't want to do that. I think I'm pretty comfortable here and it's going well.
Yeah.
But I also know myself, and I think that um, I don't like to sit still. I
Okay.
like to be busy. I like projects.
Yeah.
It keeps me out of trouble. And it keeps me, I don't know, motivated and hungry, and I don't know. I think that's an important part of keeping your mind young.
Yes. You have a very ambitious mindset, so it makes sense why there is no real kind of, I don't want to say a goal for the future, but it's ever changing.
For sure. I
Okay.
don't, there's a part of me that thinks I should continue this path for the next, 15 years. Connor's 10, my youngest is 10, Patrick is 16. I think I definitely want to have stability in
Yeah.
my career until Connor graduates college, which is 12 years away from now. So there's that.
Okay.
But eventually I could totally see myself teaching full time at a university
Really?
in Florida.
Specifically in Florida.
Yes.
I'm not gonna say that's a bad idea because
Yes.
that's an amazing place
Yes.
to. I wouldn't call going into teaching retiring, but
Right.
maybe a little bit more relaxed lifestyle.
Yeah. And maybe I
Yeah.
can work for somebody else 1 or 2 days a week and they can boss me around and then I won't care.
Right now, that's not possible.
No.
Um, I guess wrapping everything off. Um, the last question I have for you is for all our listeners, what's the best advice you can give them to their day-to-day life? Something that's kind of helped you out in your life, got you to where you are, made you the successful business owner and leader that you are. Um, what's some advice that you can give them?
Well, I think character is defined by how you deal with adversity. How you get back up determines how successful you're going to be. There's going to be so many failures. There's going to be lots of no's before you hear yeses. There's going to be
Okay.
lots of obstacles to get to where you want. And I think that too many people think that there's no behind the scenes work. And there's tons of behind the scenes work to get to your goals, right? And I
Yeah.
think so much of it is inside your own mind. You have to control your thoughts. You have to control your words because that becomes your actions, right?
Yeah.
So I think if you think it and you say it, it's going to become reality.
Okay.
That's, I don't know,
I
and
like
karma.
I like that. Speaking it
What's
into fruition.
It's so true, right?
Yeah.
I feel like our own self, we sabotage ourselves too much. How we talk internally to ourselves is really important.
That is very true. Great advice, because you can start out on a track, or track it to get to your goal, but ultimately, it's if you talk yourself out of it, that's the most powerful
Yeah.
kryptonite is
Yeah.
yourself.
So what's that song? I just heard this on my Peloton the other day. The best rapper in the world.
Uh,
Oh shoot, who sings it? It's not Drake, is it?
I'm
Little
not
Wayne.
sure.
I think it's Little Wayne.
Is it?
And he believes in himself.
He does. He does.
And I think we all have to believe in ourselves if you want to get through adversity and get through obstacles. How you talk inside your own brain is really important.
I think that's an amazing piece of advice coming from somebody who had to talk to yourself from a very young age,
Yeah.
positively, influentially, keep yourself motivated and going, and look where it's got you now. So
Yeah.
that's awesome. So thank you
I've
so
had
much.
Yeah,
Go
thank
ahead.
you. And I've had a lot of mentors along the way.
Well, you know what? I think that's another key piece of advice that we'll kind of add into this, since you mentioned it. Finding mentors that align with you, but
Yeah.
not so much that they cater to you, that they'll still push you and keep you on the right path.
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Dr. Stacey. That's
Thank you, Josh.
it's been
Thanks
awesome.
for having me.
Yeah, for sure.
You're pretty awesome yourself.
Well, thank you so much. I can't wait to hear what's next for you.
I love it. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.